Housewives shouldn't splurge, especially when they only work part-time.
My husband flung those words at me as I sat on the sofa when he came home from work. Confused by his sudden outburst, I quickly retorted, "Where did that even come from? When have I ever splurged?"
You do your everyday job that anyone could do, and then just laze around at home, right? Here I am, slaving away from morning to night.
Excuse me? Are you being serious right now?
The food budget is $150, and no using the air conditioning. If you can't save money, we're getting a divorce. Got it?
He declared this with an air of triumph, as if looking down on me. But strangely, I didn't feel sad. The only thing that surged within me was anger towards him. Don't be ridiculous. Do you think you're the only one making our life work? Fine. Let's do it your way then. With a smile, I opened my mouth to respond. Sure, but don't regret it, okay? My name is Brooke, 32 years old. I'm a working wife who has a part-time job at a nearby shopping mall. Marvin and I have been married for about 3 years, past the honeymoon phase. We've become accustomed to living together, and lately we really don't hold back. I guess it shows how comfortable we feel with each other. It must be nice to live without walking on eggshells around each other. I'm jealous. That's what a friend told me. But is it really a good thing? It's true, we've become more comfortable compared to when we first moved in together, able to live more freely. But at the same time, I feel like we've started to care less about each other. This realization hit me after a recent incident. That day, I felt sick from the morning, but still went to work. Despite only being a 4-hour shift, I was spent when I got home and collapsed on the sofa, falling asleep right away.
Hey, what time do you think it is?
I woke up to his yelling, only to see my husband glaring down at me like some angry spirit. I glanced at the clock, and it was past 7:30 p.m. Normally, by this time, I would have finished preparing dinner and be ready to welcome him home from work. But today, that routine was broken. Sorry, I felt terrible this morning, but after getting back from work, I just hit my limit. He glared at me and clicked his tongue in disdain, as if I was the bad guy, and briskly dismissed me.
You barely work a few hours and you have the nerve to act like this? You really have some nerve.
A few hours? It's not about that right now, it's about my health.
I work all day no matter how I feel. You can't even manage the housework? Which is practically nothing.
Wait a minute. It's not like I'm skimping on housework. Today was just an exception.
Excuses, excuses. I'm seriously disappointed. I'm cutting the grocery budget next month. Understand?
No. I was stunned, unable to believe he would say such a thing. I had felt his tone getting harsher lately. But to say something like this? Just because I was sick and slept? Why do I deserve this? I'm not even getting that much for groceries as it is. How am I supposed to manage with less? But arguing would only make him angrier. For now, I just acknowledged what he said and tried not to upset him further. It's been almost 2 months since that incident, and honestly, our marriage seems to be heading in a bad direction. The grocery budget was slashed from $385 to $285 overnight, making our already tight finances even tighter. I had to dip into my savings to cover living expenses, and the anxiety was mounting day by day. I dream of having children and owning a home someday. So one day, I decided to bring it up to him. I want to work more hours, maybe even full-time if I can. When I told him after he returned from work, he grimaced openly. He sighed heavily, pointed at me, and said coldly,
"What? Someone who falls ill and skips chores wants to work more? How are you going to manage the household then?"
"It's not about that. The grocery budget's been cut, and at this rate, we won't even be able to save. I thought about working more for our future."
"What? That's because you can't manage the grocery budget properly. Don't blame me for cutting it, and run away from the fact that it's your fault for neglecting the housework."
"That's not it. It wasn't me skimping on chores. I was sick that time."
Yeah. Nice excuses. Anyway, I won't allow you to work more hours. Just stick to the housework and manage the budget better."
He said this with an air of victory, then grabbed a beer from the fridge and started gulping it down. He's the only one who drinks at home, and yet I have to find a way to include the alcohol in the grocery budget. His utterly unreasonable demands were making me furious. I realized that my love for my husband had disappeared, replaced only by negative feelings. Then, on a particularly hot day with temperatures soaring above 95 degrees, just walking outside made me sweat profusely. After returning from work, I immediately turned on the air conditioning and sipped cold tea while working on the household budget. The expenses were tight with the reduced budget, especially since we bought alcohol. I doubted Marvin would give me extra money, so I decided to supplement the shortfall from my savings. After finishing the budget for the month, it was time to start preparing dinner. I was checking the weather forecast on the TV when I heard the front door open. Huh? As I uttered this, the living room door opened. My husband, who usually doesn't come home this early, appeared in the living room. "Marvin, you're home awfully early today."
"Is it a problem if I come home early?"
"It's not that, but it's only 6 p.m. You usually don't get home until around 8, so dinner isn't ready yet."
"I left work on time today. What an inconsiderate woman."
He rumbled as he tossed his work bag onto the floor and roughly took off his suit, changing into casual clothes before glaring at me.
"Housewives shouldn't splurge, especially when they only work part-time."
He looked at me, sitting on the sofa, as if I were trash. Confused by his sudden outburst, I quickly retorted, "Where did that come from? When have I ever splurged?"
"Like right now? Lounging in this cool room?"
"No, I was just working on the household budget after coming back from work."
"You do a job that anyone could do and then just lays around at home, right? While I work my butt off all day long."
"Are you serious?" His one-sided belittling pushed me to my limit. I glared back at him, but he didn't seem the least bit ashamed as he looked down on me.
"A failure of a wife like you needs more discipline. I'm setting rules starting today."
"Rules? What are you even talking about?"
"The food budget is $150, and no using the air conditioning. If you can't save, we're getting a divorce. Got it?"
He declared this triumphantly, looking down on me. Yet, surprisingly, I didn't feel sad. The only thing that surged within me was anger towards him. Don't be ridiculous. Do you think you're the only one making our life work? Fine, let's do it your way then. With a smile, I opened my mouth to respond. Sure, but don't regret it, okay?
Huh? Who do you think you are?
When I decide to do something, I go all out. You'll see. He was momentarily taken aback, but soon returned to his arrogant demeanor. Finally, he dismissively said,
Knock yourself out then.
And started guzzling his beer. The next day, I began to save money in earnest. Of course, I didn't use the air conditioning. Instead, I wrapped ice in a plastic bag, used a towel around my neck, and relied on ice pillows, enduring the heat at home. As for the food budget, realistically, managing $150 was almost impossible. So I decided to cut down on common expenses like bread and soup to stay within the budget, and bought what I wanted to eat separately, eating alone. But of course, Marvin wouldn't stay quiet about it. The moment he saw me eating chicken by myself, he turned red with anger and shouted,
Hey, why are you eating chicken alone?
Why? I bought it with my own money. If you want something, buy it yourself.
What? Since when did you get so high and mighty, being supported by me?
Yes, financially, I've been relying on you. But what about you? At this point, why don't we both handle our own expenses and do our own chores?
What?
He was visibly shaken and struggled to respond, probably because he didn't know how to do housework. Another day, he came home early and started yelling about the house being too hot. Even then, I made it clear to him. Hot? But that can't be helped, right? You said no air conditioning.
That's for when you're alone. Why do I have to suffer in this heat?
Then why don't you put an air conditioner in your own room? I've already removed the batteries from the remote because you banned it.
What? Then at least give me an ice pillow.
Oh, sorry. I only have the one I bought, so if you need one, buy it yourself.
This is ridiculous.
Even at night, it was sweltering. His casual words had backfired on him. But thanks to this, my savings steadily increased. Not having to supplement the food budget from my savings was the biggest relief, along with a significant reduction in utility bills. With more money in my savings, I made a decision to divorce Marvin. I realized over these months that there was a reason he couldn't give me more for living expenses. He was spending it on his favorite mobile game. I found a card statement in the trash, showing hundreds of dollars in gaming charges. The spending increased each month, likely using the money saved from the food budget. The most recent statement showed charges over $2,000. Seeing that, my already cold feelings turned to ice. $2,000 for a game? While making me suffer and struggle with the budget? Ridiculous. I can't be with this man any longer. Deciding to divorce him, I spoke to my workplace about becoming a full-time employee. Recognizing my work, they immediately agreed to employ me full-time. Starting next month, I'd be working as a full staff member, and I began looking for a new place to live. I found an apartment and prepared to move, making sure Marvin didn't find out. That evening, a sweaty Marvin came home, complaining as usual. I presented him with the divorce papers and calmly said, "Can you sign this?"
Huh? What? What is this?
Can't you see? It's a divorce agreement.
Divorce? What are you suddenly talking about? We weren't even discussing divorce.
I just think it's impossible to continue. That's why I'm saying this. You don't really think you have no idea why, do you? His face turned pale, and his smug smile twisted. He stared at the divorce agreement I had handed him, and then shoved it back at me. Breathing heavily, he desperately pleaded.
Wait a minute. This has to be a bad joke, right?
A joke? You think I'd say something like this as a joke?
But this is crazy. Why divorce? And you'll be in trouble if we divorce. You can't live on your own. You'll struggle without my money.
Thinking that bringing up money would make me back down? He had no idea how much I had prepared for this day. He forced me to save excessively and spent that money on his entertainment. There were many reasons why I considered divorce, but the most unforgivable was that he saw me not as family, but merely as a convenient housekeeper. He was probably afraid of how his life would be disrupted without me, especially since he couldn't do any housework and had apparently been estranged from his parents due to past troubles. Frankly, he had no one else to rely on but me. But I no longer cared. I had no intention of going back to him. I stared at him, seething, and vented my pent-up frustration. Forcing me to save while you splurge on gaming? How much more do you need to mock me? You might have been happy cutting down the money you give to the house. But did you know I was using my savings to make ends meet?
I get it. I'll start contributing more to the grocery budget again.
It's too late for that. Just so you know, I have no intention of working or doing chores for you anymore. Not even a millimeter. Living alone is far better than taking care of a jerk like you.
What? How am I supposed to live on my own? Think it over, please?
Shut up. A domineering husband like you is unbearably annoying. You might as well writhe in agony living alone. With that outburst, Marvin collapsed on the spot, mouth agape. He didn't say anything more, finally realizing his situation. Later, we got divorced. Perhaps realizing that rebuilding our relationship was impossible, he readily signed the divorce papers and agreed to the divorce. Without me, his financial burdens increased, and he had to manage everything on his own. He reportedly made several mistakes at work and lost any chance of promotion. Now he just shuttles between home and work, barely making ends meet. As for me, I started living alone and began my job as a full-time employee. Working full-time again after so long was challenging at first, but I'm finally settling in. Most importantly, starting this life gave me confidence that I could survive on my own. That alone gives me the strength to keep going. All right, let's give it my all today. I'll treat myself to something delicious this weekend. Finding joy in everyday life and using it as motivation to keep going, I now find happiness in these ordinary days.
Today, I'm having a drinking party at home with friends, so get things ready.
I received a text message from my husband, who has consistently had a bad attitude towards me while I'm bedridden with severe morning sickness. I quickly replied, "I can't do it, it's too sudden." I didn't get a response, so I tried calling, but my husband never answered. I had reached my limit. I won't forgive him for his previous attitude or for today's drinking party. I'm going to punish him. And then I put my plan into action. Around 6 p.m., my husband returned home with many footsteps behind him.
Hey, what are you doing sleeping? Didn't I tell you we're having a drinking party today? You haven't prepared anything at all.
Daryl came into my bedroom and yelled at me, and I answered him, dizzy and unable to get up. That's why I said it's impossible.
Hey, just get up. Hurry up and get out the booze.
I smiled in place and replied, Is that all you want to say? After that, my husband realized everything and began to tremble. My name is Katerina. I'm a 29-year-old working housewife. After graduating from the university's science department, I joined Norson, a small machinery manufacturer. Despite being small, it possesses a strong technical expertise and is a highly respected presence in the industry, with a high job acceptance rate. During the interview, Daniela, the female president and representative of the company, told me, It's unusual for women to want to join our company. Your university grades are excellent. I've interviewed you and found you to be a great person, and I'd like to invite you to join our company. Oh, thank you so much. I will definitely strive to be of great value once I join. Work hard from now on, okay? From that moment, the president became my role model. In getting the job offer from Norson, which was my first choice, became the happiest event of my life. Working here was hard, but also fun. I wasn't underestimated because I was a woman, and I was entrusted with significant tasks, allowing me to see my skills improve over time. In my third year at the company, I was approached by Daryl, the sales department manager, at a social gathering.
Was there ever a girl like you in the R&D department? It's rare for a girl to join our company.
I was nervous as Daryl approached me in a casual manner. After all, he's the biological son of the president and the executive director. It's widely rumored within the company that he's the next successor. I was nervous talking to Daryl at the time, but for some reason he seemed to like me.
You're like a serious and modest person. Quite refreshing. Hey, how about going out for a meal next time?
Thus, Daryl and I started going out to dinner together. Daryl has a liberal arts degree, which is unusual for our company, and he is a good communicator. He seemed to have a personality suited to sales. In fact, he seemed pretty good at his job. Daryl's lighthearted, or rather cheerful personality was also refreshing to me. They say people are drawn to what they don't have, and I was no exception. We dated for about a year and a half, and eventually Daryl proposed to me.
Katerina, let's get married. Please accept my proposal.
Daryl, thank you. I'm very happy. I happily accepted the ring that Daryl offered. As I gazed at it with delight, Daryl teasingly said,
By the way, isn't this what they call a Cinderella story? Marrying the future company president?
Well, I'm not marrying you just because you're the president's son.
Oh, that's right, isn't it? Well, from now on, please take care of me, Katerina.
Afterward, we first went to meet my parents. My rural parents were delighted and gave their approval for the marriage. Next, it was time to visit Daryl's parents. The president, or rather my mother-in-law, beamed at me. I remember you from the interview, and I've heard that you're competent within the company. Bringing home someone like that as your wife is quite a catch, Daryl. My father-in-law also welcomed me with a quiet smile and gave his approval for the marriage. After some small talk, my mother-in-law suddenly turned serious. Katerina, I'm thinking of making Daryl the next successor, but he has a bit of a carefree side to him, so I want you to educate him. Come on, Mom. You too, Daryl. Having a family means you have more to be protective. It won't be business as usual. Treat Katerina well. I understand. Mom, Dad, I look forward to your support from now on. I greeted them in this way. A while later, we had our wedding. We invited all the employees and had a grand celebration. Later, my mother-in-law presented us with a gift for our wedding. We began living together in a single-family house. I thought that our happy married life was about to begin, but I soon encountered a problem. Daryl was the type who didn't do any household chores. He had experience living on his own, so he should have been capable. But he didn't even press a button on the washing machine. While I was doing all the household work, he would lie on the sofa watching TV. I also had my job to attend to, so taking on all the household chores was honestly a burden. When I lived alone, I could get away with making a simple dinner and doing the cleaning on the weekend, but it was different when living with a husband. After 3 months of living like that, with only me doing the housework, I finally complained to Daryl. Hey, Daryl, I have a favor to ask. Can you help out a bit more with household chores? Daryl, without taking his eyes off the TV, responded like this.
Huh? Can't you just keep doing the chores like before? I'm tired from work.
I work too. It's not fair that I'm the only one responsible for household chores. This is unreasonable.
What's unreasonable about it? I'm the next company president, you know. Are you suggesting that such an important figure should do household chores? That's what's unreasonable.
I was left speechless. Regardless of whether Daryl would become the next company president or not, isn't family separate from work? When I tried to convey this, Daryl's expression soured.
Katerina, you came here as a bride, right? Household chores should be done by women.
Was this his true opinion? I was in shock at his outdated statement, and Daryl casually said,
Right, I'm inviting friends over from now. Do we have any alcohol?
What? From now?
Make sure you can entertain my friends properly. You're my wife, after all.
My concern wasn't just that my husband wouldn't help with household chores. Daryl frequently invited his college friends over to our house for parties. Each time I had to prepare alcohol and food, and my precious leisure time was being taken away. I understood that Daryl had his social connections and valued his friends, but honestly, dealing with this every week was exhausting. About a year into our marriage, I started experiencing health issues. I felt dizzy and had mild nausea that persisted. I decided to go to the hospital thinking it might be something serious. To my surprise, I was informed that I was pregnant. Overjoyed, I shared the news with my husband, and he was equally thrilled.
Katerina, is it a boy or a girl?
You're getting ahead of yourself, Daryl.
But I'm really looking forward to it. I'm so happy.
I genuinely felt glad to see the happiness on my husband's face. After that, we shared the news of my pregnancy with my in-laws who live nearby, and they were even happier than Daryl.
Congratulations, Katerina. Take good care of your health. If there's anything we can do, just let us know.
Thank you, Mom. At that moment, my father-in-law said to Daryl,
Daryl, from now on, make sure to support Katerina. Reduce those drinking parties and come back home early to be by her side. I understand, Dad.
It seemed that Daryl had a hard time saying no to my in-laws. Since he seemed so amenable, I thought everything would be fine. However, Daryl continued to have parties with friends at the same pace as before. I asked him to stop inviting friends to our home during this critical time. He stopped inviting friends to our home, but he began going to bars instead. Each time he would come home late at night heavily intoxicated. I was becoming frustrated, but I didn't say anything. After a while, my morning sickness became severe. I was dizzy all day and vomited multiple times. Even the slightest strong smell would make me throw up. Whether I ate or not, I couldn't avoid vomiting up stomach acid. In this state, it was impossible for me to work, and gradually I couldn't go to work at all. One day, while taking a half day off and resting at home, I received a message from my mother-in-law.
Katerina, I asked your boss about your condition. It seems your morning sickness is quite severe.
Yes, it's true. I'm really sorry that I can't work properly.
It's all right. How about taking a leave of absence until your morning sickness settles, or better yet, until you give birth?
A leave of absence?
Yes, your health is essential right now. Don't worry, your place is secure, and this would be the best choice for the time being.
Thank you, Mom. No, thank you, President. I'll do that. So it was decided that I would take a leave of absence until giving birth. When I informed Daryl about this, he frowned.
Huh? A leave of absence due to morning sickness? I've never heard of that.
It can't be helped. I'm genuinely not feeling well.
But never mind. Since you're not going to work, at least make sure the household chores are perfect, alright?
Huh? I was surprised, and Daryl continued.
Of course. Lately you've been slacking with meals, right? I've noticed.
But I'm trying my best. I'm doing everything I can because strong smells make me nauseous.
How can you have a child like that? Since you're in a housewife-like situation now, make sure the household chores are perfect. Got it?
Ordinarily, when a wife is suffering from morning sickness, a husband in the right mind would help with chores or bring her suitable food. But Daryl didn't do any of that. Instead, he went out drinking almost every night and ordered me to maintain perfect housekeeping while I could hardly stand. I was deeply disappointed by Daryl's attitude. Weeks passed, but my morning sickness didn't subside. It actually peaked. During that time, Daryl returned home once again heavily intoxicated. He didn't even take off his suit and started snoring on the sofa. I sighed and began cleaning up the mess my husband had made. I picked up a phone from the floor and saw the screen. There was a text message that went like this. Daryl, thanks for coming to the bar again today. I'll be waiting for you tomorrow. The sender's name is Jasmine. It's clear from this message that Daryl has become quite close to the bartender. I felt my anger rising. How could he flirt with a bartender while I was suffering from morning sickness? I thought about waking Daryl up, but he was deep asleep, so I gave up for the day. Instead, I took a screenshot of the message. A week later, the morning sickness was particularly bad and I was down for the morning. Then I got a call from Daryl in the evening.
Today I'm having a drinking party at home with friends, so get ready.
I quickly replied that it was impossible. When I didn't get a response, I called him, but he didn't answer. I had reached my limit. He didn't understand how severe my morning sickness was, and he wanted to have a gathering at our home after spending time at a bar. I couldn't let this go. I decided to teach him a lesson. I contacted someone, and around 6 p.m., Daryl returned home with a group of friends.
Hey, why are you sleeping? I told you we're having a gathering today. You haven't prepared anything.
He came to the bedroom and shouted at me. I, dizzy from my morning sickness, responded. I messaged you. I can't do it today because my morning sickness is really bad. At least go out and have a drink.
What's with all this morning sickness all the time? Don't be so whiny.
I told you, it's impossible.
Come on, get up. Serve some snacks with the drinks.
I smiled in place and replied, Is that the only thing you have to say?
Huh? What are you talking about?
Daryl seemed annoyed and grabbed my arm, trying to pull me out of bed. Suddenly, the closet door in the bedroom creaked open.
What? Mom? Dad too?
That's when my father-in-law and mother-in-law, whom I had invited, emerged from the closet. Their faces were beet red, and they had their arms crossed.
What? Why are my parents here? What's going on?
Realizing he had been overheard, Daryl began to tremble uncontrollably. Then my mother-in-law calmly said, Tell your friends to leave immediately.
But...
Do it now. Daryl shrank and sent his friends home, leaving only my husband and me with my in-laws. Daryl, sit there. My mother-in-law said sharply, and Daryl with a pale face sat down. My father-in-law continued with a low voice.
I've told you multiple times to take care of Katerina while she's pregnant. What the heck is this? Dad, listen, today was just a one-time thing.
My mother-in-law then interjected.
I've heard everything from Katerina. You've been going out drinking almost every day since you found out she was pregnant. I even saw your messages. You knew about all of that?
You admit it, don't you? And inviting many friends over while your pregnant wife was bedridden due to morning sickness, and then telling her to prepare snacks? Who do you think you are? Watching Daryl shrink under my mother-in-law's scolding, I almost burst into laughter.
Start by apologizing to Katerina.
My father-in-law said sharply, and Daryl bowed his head to me.
Katerina, I'm sorry for everything, but I was genuinely happy about the baby. That's the truth. And about the drinking gatherings, my friends invited me, saying they wanted to celebrate the pregnancy.
No more excuses, my mother-in-law shouted, and Daryl bowed his head to me again, tears in his eyes.
I'm sorry, Katerina. Please forgive me. I promise to be a better husband from now on.
My mother-in-law sighed. I never thought you could be such a fool.
I will respect Katerina's decision regarding the future, but we'll drop the talk of you becoming the heir. What? Mom, you can't.
Be silent. All you can do is follow Katerina's decisions. All three of them turned their attention towards me, and I quietly said, Daryl, I'll spare you from divorce, but until the child is born, we'll be living separately.
Separation?
Mom, Dad, could you please help educate Daryl until then? Upon my request, my in-laws nodded vigorously.
Katerina, thank you for not divorcing our foolish son. We'll straighten him out ourselves. Yes, maybe we should make him a monk or something. What? A monk? Please have mercy.
With a pitiful voice, Daryl was led away by his parents. I waved to them with a smile. As promised, afterward, Daryl and I lived separately. He was forced to do all the housework at his in-laws' house and was strictly disciplined by his parents. And it seems like he really was made to have a monk's haircut, too. Later, Daryl contacted me repeatedly for help, but I ignored him. A few months later, with the help of my in-laws, I gave birth safely. A sweet little boy was born. When Daryl was allowed to meet him, he quietly shed tears. Now, Daryl and I are living together again. He's become a different person, coming home early, helping with household chores and childcare. He's working hard to regain recognition as the heir apparent.
I'm sorry for what I did back then. I was truly at fault.
He apologized, with his head lowered. While forgiving him, I made it clear that I would be taking the lead from now on. My in-laws have always supported me and showered love on their grandchild. I'm grateful for them, and I want to continue living happily as a family.